What is going on, everybody? My name is Jeff Lightsy Jr. here with the Black Boss Channel and Victory Formation. Thank you guys for tuning in. We have a special guest, Mr. Khari Thompson. He is the beat writer for the Jackson State Tigers football team over at the Clarion-Ledger in Jackson, Mississippi. Khari, how's it going tonight, man?
It's great, Jeff. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
Hey, it's no problem, man. Khari is going to talk to us all things Celebration Bowl ahead of Jackson State's matchup against South Carolina State, and what it looks like is going to be the first ever sold out Celebration Bowl, one of the most impactful HBCU football games in a long, long time. Khari, for someone who covers the team, what has this week been like? What has this game leading up to the game been like for you and been like for all the fans down in Jackson?
Well, that announcement that the Celebration Bowl sold out is epic. I mean, I think you'd have to put that among the most consequential HBCU games ever. To see us. I mean, I know there's there's a long storied history, back in the day, but to see in today's environment with what HBCU sports have been through, to see two HBCUs that have never been to the Celebration Bowl sell it out on the first try, and two of them that haven't won a national championship in a long, long time sell it out on the first try is humongous. I mean, think about how many sold out Falcons games have there been this year? Like, and you got Jackson State and South Carolina State about to sell out, Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That's incredible.
Yeah, man. I mean, that is, I mean, the standing room only, quite literally. Like, the tickets for the standing room are going to go on sale on Wednesday the 15th. And that is pretty remarkable to see the fact that these two teams, like you just alluded to, that have never been there. But part of the reason why this is happening is what I like to call the Deion Sanders prime effect. Now, Khari, as someone, a graduate of an HBCU who's covered sports, just what has Deion Sanders, from your perspective, meant not only to the JSU football team, but to Jackson State University and to Jackson, the city?
Well, it's literally been unprecedented, and you can measure that. Like, I don't want to just throw that out lightly. Jackson State averaged over 42,000 fans per game this year. That's an FCS record. So that's not a HBCU record. That's an FCS record. You only find averages above that in FBS. So you've got record-setting crowds. You've got 11 wins for the first time in Jackson State history. And you've got Jackson State playing for its first national title in a quarter century, 25 years. 1996 was the last time Jackson State claimed an HBCU national title. So it's been nothing short of historic. You could even argue that it's the best Jackson State football season ever.
Wow, the best Jackson State football season ever. That's pretty incredible, especially for a school and a program that has a storied history like Jackson State. We're talking about 4 NFL Hall of Famers, right, numerous of draft picks, it's et cetera, et cetera. For this season, sweetness. What'd you say?
Walter Payton, sweetness.
Absolutely. And to say that this season, Coach Prime's first year, essentially, I'm going to call it the first year. It's the first fall season under Deion Sanders, for it to be this historic. I mean, is that something that the people in Jackson, did they even anticipate this? From the people that you talked to, is this something that they even expected, or was this expected? Was this the expectation?
I think the expectations were through the roof because, Deion Sanders, everything he does is big. And you got to remember that the city of Jackson as a whole contributed to this. Like, it's not just one man that has, done this. I mean, yes, it couldn't have been done without Deion for sure. But, like, man, there's not 42,000 Deion Sanders walking into Mississippi Veteran Memorial Stadium every week. You know what I mean? So, like, there's a whole bunch of folks that believed in what Coach Prime is doing from the start, and they supported it, and they put their dollars behind it, and now you can see the results.
And that's interesting that you say that they put their dollars behind it, because I watched I think it was a report from Visit Jackson that said, this football season brought in $30 million to the city of Jackson, and that I mean, that goes to what you were just saying. It's the fact that this community actually backed this HBCU. Now, thinking of that and thinking of, the other HBCUs across not just the SWAC, the MEAC, but across the country, just is this a model? Is this a prototype that you see? Maybe they go out and get their version. Now, obviously, Jackson State's got Deion, but maybe they go out and get their version of a Deion Sanders to try to revitalize their football program. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you see the other SWAC schools trying it. You see Grambling hired Hugh Jackson, which that's a big hire. That's a former NFL head coach. And it's rumored that they even offered the job. Well, not even rumored, it's been reported that they offered the job to Ed Reed and he turned it down. You've got Eddie George up at Tennessee State, up in Nashville. The reason why I don't think you can compare Jackson State to most HBCUs is because they have the built-in infrastructure that a lot of HBCUs don't have. Like, I go to Jackson State games every week and I'm like, Hampton could never do this at their current state. And Hampton's one of the elite HBCUs, but in their current state, they can't do what Jackson State is doing because they don't have a 60,000 seat stadium that they play in their home games. It's like, even if Hampton had a sellout every game, it'd be like 18,000. And like outside of like Tennessee State and like Jackson State, and like maybe FAMU and a couple others, most HBCUs just don't have the infrastructure to do this, even if they have the fan interest to draw 40,000 a game.
Yeah, that's some. I've never been to an HBCU stadium, so I didn't know that Jackson State is like in a rarity when it comes to having a 55, 60,000 seat stadium. So you're just saying that's not common across HBCUs across this country at all?
No. The only other one I think is close is Tennessee State is a bigger stadium because they play where the Titans play.
Yes, I know that.
But your average typical run-of-the-mill SWAC team, like if you're talking, I don't know, if you're talking Bethune-Cookman, right? If you're talking Mississippi Valley State, you have some schools in the SWAC that have 10,000 seat stadiums.
Wow.
It's very different in terms of the resources and just the fact that like Jackson State has this huge stadium that Ole Miss used to play in. Now it's theirs. And so it just makes things different. Also, at certain schools, the people just come to the school and then like go back to wherever they're from.
This is true.
Like Hampton, right? Like,
yeah.
Take a Hampton or a Howard. There's a lot of people that come to a Hampton or a Howard from all over the country. And I'm not saying people don't come to Jackson State from all over the country. But what I'm saying is after graduation, you see everybody leave Hampton. Go back to the East Coast, go back to the West Coast, go back down south wherever they're from. But there's a lot of Jackson State's fans that are from Jackson. Their granddad went to Jackson. Dad went to Jackson. Mama, aunties. Everybody went to JSU. And so you really see that because they let FCS in attendance before Coach Sanders was even hired. So just him being here takes what's already been a great thing to another level.
Once again, we're talking to Khari Thompson of the Clarion-Ledger. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe, because we're talking all things Celebration Bowl, Jackson State, and etc. Now, let's get to the game. The game's taking place this weekend down in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Khari, from what you've been reporting, from the things that are taking place, what are you expecting? Let's talk about from the Jackson State perspective. Last time we saw them on the field, they didn't have their best performance, especially offensively. What are you expecting from that Jackson State offense? Has gotten 2 weeks to rest, 2 weeks to prepare, and heading down to Atlanta, to Coach Prime, to his home is what he called it, a homecoming, him and a bunch of other people on his staff. What are you expecting at that Tigers team in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Saturday?
Well, if you ask Coach Prime about Mercedes-Benz Stadium, even though it's the new one, it's not the Georgia Dome.
Yeah,
I built that thing. He built that thing. So, I mean, he's got his son, Shedeur Sanders, who's the starting quarterback, who was named 2 days ago the FCS Freshman of the Year. I think Shedeur is going to have a huge game. He didn't get to throw much in the SWAC championship game. He only threw the ball 16 times. He was 8 for 16. I mean, objectively, it was his worst game of the season. Yeah. But that only means that the bounce back is going to be that much meaner. Like, I think he's going to throw the ball over the field. South Carolina State has given up 30 points or more in most of their games. I don't see anything any different. I see Shedeur putting up at least 28. My prediction was 35. The thing that concerns me about Jackson State is they are a bit one-dimensional. They really struggle running the ball. But Shedor's been so good. Shedor's been so good, and they have so many weapons at receiver that it hasn't really mattered. Like, they can just get 100 to 125 yards on the ground on a good day and still win. So, because the reality is, it almost doesn't matter how they do on offense. Their defense is just so dominant. Like,
it's nasty.
If you ask, Coach Prime literally said after the game, on the SWAC championship game, he's like, I told the offense all we need to do is score 21 points because Prairie View ain't scoring 21 on us. And I think it's a similar mindset going into South Carolina State. It's just like, if you're an FCS team scoring 21 on that defense, I mean, their only loss of the year was to an FBS team, and that team didn't score 21.
Yeah, it was 7-6, wasn't it? Wasn't the game, or 9-7 or something?
That was 12-7, I believe.
12-7. Okay.
They had that 7-6 matchup you're thinking of against FAMU.
Yeah, it was FAMU. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah.
Now, Khari, what if I push back and say, well, there were just throws in the Prairie View game that the Prairie View quarterback, Juwan Pass, just didn't make. Right there, he had 4 turnovers. Now, obviously, the defense has a lot to do with the 4 turnovers, but there were guys that were running open at times. There were some throws he just missed, and maybe that this South Carolina State offense can actually make those plays. And Khari, you got to think about this. They've had almost like a month off. They've been able to prepare for this game because you pretty much knew Jackson State was going to win the SWAC championship game. They've been able to prepare for this game. Jackson State got 2 weeks. South Carolina State got 3-4 weeks to prepare for this game. And what are your thoughts on that?
I'll let you with 2 points. Point one is that Juwan Pass is under intense pressure because Jackson State leads the FCS in sacks. Yes. And you can see they were coming after that dude. So naturally, when you have that kind of pressure by all these dudes that are Power 5 SEC transfers like James Houston and Aubrey Miller, you're going to make mistakes. Point two, you talk about, okay, what if he made some of those throws? Jackson State got completely fooled by this trick play in the first half that just left butt naked open. A lot of people couldn't get any more open. If they didn't get fooled by that, then it's 27-3. So it's like, you can play the what if game if you want, but at the end of the day, he hit a big trick play. And, you got to give him his credit for it. Dude was even doing the prime dance, the primetime shuffle after he hit that touchdown. So, like, come on, man.
This is true. This is true, man. I got to give you a little pushback, man. Once again, we're talking to Khari Thompson of the Clarion-Ledger. Be sure to the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Khari, I want to talk to you because National Signing Day is just pretty much here. Before we get to the upcoming class for Jackson State, you talked about some of those transfers into Jackson State for Coach Prime, for Dennis Thurman, for the offense, all these guys. How big was it to get some of these guys in on their team, and what type of impact have you seen up close and personal that they've been able to make on the field this season for a Jackson State team in the spring that was most notably beatable? They took a lot of thumps, but for this fall have been completely dominant, specifically in the SWAC conference.
Listen, man, I mean, they've been able to take teams that really like to throw the ball completely out of the game just because their pass rush just gets after it. I mean, you look at Alabama A&M, it's not a bad team. They have Akil Glass, who was player of the year, and threw for over 3,000 yards. That was a 61-15 beatdown. Just because, I mean, you got to give Jackson State's D-line and linebackers props. They get after the quarterback. I mean, it's just what they do. I mean, they have 15 more sacks than any other FCS team. Part of that is because they've played some postseason games, but also part of that is James Houston is a dude who signed with Florida out of high school, and he just has that kind of talent. Aubrey Miller is a Mizzou guy, Antoine Owens, Georgia Tech guy. Even though, it might not have worked out for those guys at their previous school, they certainly have the talent. and the measurables that Power 5 coaches really look for. And it's just been huge. And then, of course, a team coached by Deion Sanders is going to know how to play some defensive back. I would imagine that they would know a little something about playing DB.
Yeah, man, that you're absolutely right about that. That was, I mean, this defense has been nasty. This defense has, I mean, honestly, it's been the lifeline of this team. It's been the heart and soul of this team. The way they get after the quarterbacks, they don't get a lot of interceptions, but the quarterbacks don't get a chance to throw the ball very often because, like you said, they're leading the entire country in sacks. Now, Khari, I want to talk to you about some recruiting. Let's talk some recruiting. Before we get into National Signing Day, I know that a ton of recruits have been at the Jackson State home games throughout the season. Just what has that been like? What has that atmosphere been like for the recruits coming into the vet, seeing the team play, seeing the team perform, not lose a game at home, not lose any SWAC games? What kind of has that atmosphere, that 42,000 average attendance atmosphere been like at the vet this season?
It's unlike anything else in college football. And I say that, I don't say it lightly. I say that because there are no FBS college football teams that are HBCUs.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when you're talking about schools that are historically Black and have historically served Black students,
mm-hmm.
There ain't none drawing the type of numbers that Jackson State is drawing. So, you know, even if you ask Deion Sanders, like, it's completely different looking at a crowd of 60,000 on occasion of what he calls our people.
Our people. I love that quote, man.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, it's just different, man. It's just different. I mean, I've always kind of dreamed and fantasized about what it would be like to have like an FBS HBCU because there's like no options. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Why should HBCUs always be on the FCS level? Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that Jackson State is an FBS HBCU, but I'm saying attendance levels and atmosphere has kind of been on par with it this year. And just backing it up with stats, Jackson State versus Alcorn.
Yeah, I messed that up too, man. They ripped me to shreds for that, by the way.
Jackson State versus Alcorn, which if you're not an HBCU person, you're like, who's Jackson State and Alcorn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jackson State and Alcorn outdrew the Egg Bowl in Mississippi. So you had Mississippi State versus Ole Miss on the same day in the same state, and more fans went to the Jackson State Alcorn game.
Wow. And we're talking about universities that probably have, 40, 50,000 students.
Right.
Wow.
So, like, I'm backing it up with stats here. It's not just opinion.
Man, that's crazy, man, because I think I went to Western Kentucky University, so it's a Conference USA school. And just to hear, first of all, when I first heard, I thought Jackson State, like when I first started doing these things, I thought Jackson State Stadium held about 40,000. And I was like, dang, 40,000, that is a lot of people to hold in a HBCU. And then the people quickly in the comments corrected, no, sir. We hold 60,000. It was 40,000 at whatever game, one of those spring games. It's like, it was 40,000 there at that game, but we can get 60,000 in the vet when we're rolling and it's not COVID and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? 60,000 people? And sure enough, their homecoming game, they brought out 60,000 fans. I mean, it was, and that's 3 times the amount of fans at the school that I went to, and that's an FBS program. So, I mean, that lets me know, like, wow, the community support for Jackson State is nothing like I've ever heard of, honestly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they had 58 at that Alcorn game, another 50,000 at the SWAC championship this past week. Yeah, man. I mean, it shows, like, people try to act like Black folks don't like college football and that they don't support their teams. You know what I'm saying? Like, we love college football too. You know what I'm saying? It ain't just these SEC schools that can turn out big numbers. So I think that it's important that the spotlight is being put on this.
Yeah, man. I love it so much. I love it so much. Once again, we're talking to Khari Thompson of the Clarion-Ledger. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. Now, Khari, I do want to get into recruiting a bit. You put out an article today on the Clarion-Ledger talking about the recruiting class for Jackson State. They only have 4 current commits. What? For the fans out there that only see 4 commits after seeing that historic 2021 class, What do you say to them when they only see like, hey man, why don't we have more commits? What's going on with our class right now?
Oh, don't worry about it. They're coming. They're coming. But when you're dealing with an FCS program, obviously, and one that draws from the transfer portal as heavily as Jackson State does, there's going to be a little bit of a waiting game. You're going to have to wait and see what certain recruits are doing and what opportunities fall through at certain schools. Just because, if you're Alabama, right about now, you have your class pretty much set, right?
Yeah.
You've got 20-something recruits coming in. You've already got all your 5 stars, 4 stars lined up. Everybody's set to announce. This ain't the case of Jackson State. They got 4 kids that say they're committed. And that's not to say that they won't get more, because I believe they will. And obviously, with the competitor that Deion Sanders is, I think he's trying to top what was already a historic class last year. So I think there's going to be plenty of surprises. I just think you got to be patient. Like, you can't expect Jackson State to go toe-to-toe with Alabama mid-December. Wait till February comes and then judge the class then.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I completely agree with you on that. I think that is definitely going to – I hate early signing day anyway. I told you this before we started. I think early signing day was the worst thing. Well, not – the targeting penalty is the worst thing NCAA ever did. But this is like top 3. This is up there because it's the reason why you see these coaches leaving before the bowl games. It's the reason why you see a lot of this crazy stuff in the NCAA is because teams want to try to put together a class before the early signing day. Now, a lot of people saw – I don't know if you saw, I'm pretty sure you saw, Travis Hunter, the number 1 player in the entire country, was on the sideline at a Jackson State game. Right. For those who follow recruiting, Khari, is that anything or is that a bunch of nothing?
Here's the thing, and this is you spoke about what you call the Deion Sanders effect, right? Mm-hmm. This is the Deion effect at work. If Deion Sanders calls you and says, hey, do you want to play in front of 60,000 of our people? Do you just want to see what it's like? If you're a kid, right, do you not take that phone call?
You got to. You got to.
Like, just to see what it's like.
Yeah.
And that's what recruiting's about. You get foots indoors, right? You get Travis Hunter to get in here, look around, see what it's looking like. You know what I'm saying? See what the sonic boom sounds like. See what the J sets are dancing like, right? See everybody cheering, having a good time. That's what recruiting's all about.
So, should we make anything of Travis Hunter being there? Could there be a flip of the number 1 player in the country who is currently committed to Deion's alma mater, Florida State, ironically? Right. Is that something that we could possibly see, or am I getting ahead of myself?
I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, even if it's not Jackson State, I mean, yes, Florida State is great and they have their own football history. They're 8-13 under Mike Norvell. And Mike Norvell just got a contract extension.
I scratched my head on that one, but
that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that this kid that's number 1 overall is committed to a team that is 8-13 over the past couple years. So
you're saying there's a chance?
I'm leaving the door open, man. Let me get my silk on.
That is crazy. Just to imagine. I mean, I can't imagine. I like the feat that Coach Brown was able to do last season. The 2021 class was special. If he's able to bring in the number 1 high school prospect who is a 5-star, both receiver and cornerback, which is ridiculous in itself, I think the internet might explode, man. I think it might really go crazy with the buzz, the hype, the everything that's going on there. I think it would be insane. Once again, we're talking to Khari Thompson of the Clarion-Ledger. Now, Khari, I won't hold you for too much longer, but you talked about it earlier today. You spoke about the hiring of earlier in this broadcast. You spoke about the hiring of Hugh Jackson. Just how big is that hiring of Hugh Jackson, in your opinion, as an HBCU grad for Grambling?
It's huge. I mean, Grambling is trying to. I mean, a lot of people have called Grambling the Notre Dame of Black college football.
I didn't know that. I'd never heard that before. That's pretty cool. It's a nice little nugget you dropped.
Well, the Eddie Robinson Award, which is the award for the top FCS coach, is named for a legendary coach, Eddie Robinson, who's a Grambling longtime coach. And, Grambling has a ton of HBCU national titles. They have a ton of NFL players. I mean, they at one point were arguably the HBCU football program. It does not look like that anymore. So they had to make a splash. They go out and get Hugh Jackson. And it's huge because I think it just shows that, Jackson State is forcing people to compete with them now. Because, you can't just let Jackson State get Deion Sanders and just go about like it's status quo, man. Especially if you're a proud program like Grambling. You got to try to one-up them.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely because it takes away mediocrity. What Coach Prime with Deion Sanders did at Jackson State, it's like, okay, there's a standard now. There's a standard that we must, match our level, or he's going to run over us for however long he wants to do it. If it's the next 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, whatever it is, he's going to continue to run over us if we don't step up our game. And so that's why I like the hiring of Hugh Jackson at Grambling. Now, Khari, from you cover Jackson State, you don't cover Grambling, but I just want to ask you, do you think we could see a quick turnaround at Grambling similar to what we've seen at Jackson State by Coach Prime, or is that just a 1 in a million type of thing?
Listen, we know Hugh Jackson knows his X's and O's. The question is how well he's going to be able to recruit, and how well specifically he's going to be able to recruit the state of Louisiana, because there's so much talent down there, but you've also got LSU out there. And you've got some other schools as well. So, even other HBCUs are recruiting against your rival Southern. So, what's made Coach Prime so successful, I'm not taking away anything from him as a coach, but dude, he's brought in so much talent, it's ridiculous. It's just the game. It's a mismatch when it comes to other SWAC schools, honestly. So if Hugh Jackson can start doing stuff like that, we might be able to see it. But recruiting is going to be huge.
Recruiting is the name of the game in college football. I mean, Alabama doesn't win all these championships just because, people think Nick Saban looks good. You know what I'm saying? It's because he's got good players. And so
I would love to see what Nick Saban can do in an HBCU. Honestly, strip the resources away. Strip all the 4 and 5 stars away. Let's see how he does.
That'd be interesting. That would be interesting. I think it would be I guess our best example of that would be, his early days of his coaching career, right? Because before, now at Alabama, he could, you pick like how you said, when Coach Prime calls a recruit and say, hey, come check us out, they're going to answer the phone when Coach Prime calls. You're going to answer when Nick Saban calls. Now, but early in his coaching days, maybe those Michigan State days or even before then, he wasn't the Nick Saban that we see now. He wasn't the 6-time national champion. He wasn't having all these Heisman winners, national champions, NFL draft picks, first round picks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that would be interesting. I think we may be getting a glimpse of it with Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders may be like the Nick Saban of HBCU football. Is it too early to say that? He gets his first chance at a national title this Saturday. So is it too early to call him that?
Well, I think even he'd be like, let me win a couple national titles first. Put me in there with Nick Saban. But, man, he has a shot at it. I don't know if he'll stay long enough to see that through. I hope he does. But as you can tell, he always has options of other schools calling him.
This is true. This is true. We heard about the TCU rumors. Reggie Bush brought up his name when USC was looking for a coach. There was the rumors at Miami, like Florida State's always hovering around his head for, like you said, Norvell going 8-13, but they just gave him a contract extension. Florida State's always going to be there. It is true. Just if you had to guess, just from your interactions with coaching, your interactions with the staff, is this something that you can see Deion Sanders at Jackson State for 5 years, 10 years, or maybe even longer?
I'll put it this way. I don't think he can impact another school throughout the country the way he impacts Jackson State. He talks a lot about purpose, and he talks a lot about a calling. And I really don't think, even if he goes to Florida State and wins a national title, right? Hoorah, hooray! They've won a national title before. They've had those kind of expectations. They have the big stadium. They have the marketing. They have the recruitment all in place. You know what I'm saying? It's not transformational. What he's doing at Jackson State is transformational. It's a game changer. Jackson State has not experienced anything like this before. You can't say that wherever he is.
Hey, Khari, you couldn't be more right, man. Because the thing is, not only has he just changed Jackson State, the school, the football program, the city, he's changed HBCU sports. We just talked about how Grambling had to try to do something on par. And not just Grambling, but everybody else sees that model, sees that prototype. Now, granted, you can't get Deion Sanders. He's Jackson's. That's his. He belongs to them. You're never going to steal him away from them. But they are like, yo, there's no a reason why we should settle for less. There's no reason why we should settle for mediocrity. There's no, and I mean, no offense to the HBCUs, the SWACs, the MEACs, the whoever's, but for a long time, I think they were complacent with where they were. And it's all told by their facilities, by what's taking place. And I think Deion putting a light on what's taking place at Jackson, and not just Jackson, but across this country, has brought in more resources, has brought in media attention like nothing before. People like me has sprouted up, whether it's independent media, national media, et cetera, and that is exactly what these HBCUs needed, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would agree to that to some degree. I would think, though, you got Deion taking a major pay cut, so you are asking people kind of, to give me the hookup. You know what I mean?
It's true. And that matters.
You're not paying market rate for Deion Sanders at this point. So it's not like you can go out and be like, yeah, I'm going to go pay whoever I want to pay $10 million a year to be my coach. So that's kind of the difference. It's not the complacent. It's just that the financial realities are completely different on this level. And it makes what Deion Sanders is doing even more impressive because he's doing it making probably like 1/20th of what he could make somewhere else, but he's doing it because he feels he can make a difference.
Man, you put that beautifully, because that's something myself included and others may not have thought of. I mean, he's literally giving them the hookup. Not only is he, taking a fraction, not only what could he make at another school, but what could he make if he went coaching football? Like whether he was doing TV, you see all the ads, the Gillettes, the Aflacs, this man's everywhere. Like Coach Pough is literally everywhere on all the commercials, and he's, putting even now, but I know he's putting a ton of that stuff on the back burner because he's got to spend a lot of time with his kids. He's got to spend a lot of time being the head coach of a football team. Now, Khari, I'm going to get you out on this, man. I can't let you go without giving me a prediction for the Celebration Bowl. Once again, we're talking to Khari Thompson of the Clarion-Ledger. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe. We got some nice amount of people in here. But, Khari, Celebration Bowl 2021, Jackson State, South Carolina State. You will be in the building in Mercedes-Benz Stadium down in Atlanta. What do you expect to go down at noon Eastern on ABC?
I'm saying Jackson State by 2 or 3 touchdowns, man. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I think South Carolina State will hang around in the first half, and then Jackson State's going to pull away. I think because Jackson State does what FBS teams usually do to HBCUs. HBCUs will fight their hearts out and play a really good first half and kind of stick around and make it a game. The second half, when you got to sub those starters, you start breathing a little hard. It starts to get out of hand, and that's what I think it's going to be like in the Celebration of the Ball. So my pick is going to be Jackson State 35, South Carolina State 17.
35-17. You heard it here first. Khari, thank you so much for taking some time out of your night, man, for talking to us all things Jackson State, all things HBCU. Once again, he is a Hampton grad. So is that the real HU, or is the other school the real HU?
You don't even ask that. You already know Hampton's real HU. Come on, man.
I'll leave you alone on that, man. But once again, this is Jeff Lightsy Jr. with the Black Boss Channel in Victory Formation. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, share, subscribe on your way out, and we will see you guys next time. Peace. Hey, man.